Hey, what's going on? It's your boy BT, and I came here to talk some boxing with the thousands of True School Sports subscribers. Now, words my brethren all across the UK. Shout out to the UK. Got lots of love for the UK here on the channel, but want to speak about the UK because interesting stuff coming out of Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn's camps between two prospects that I know both of them value very highly in their stables. So, if you guys haven't heard, Joshua Buatsi, who I've never really talked about on this channel, but he's someone that I kept my eye on. A good fighter, 6-0, 4 KOs. Someone that has very good slick boxer. I really can't say much else about him, but he looks pretty good thus far in his career. And Anthony Yarde. Anthony Yarde's a guy that I've talked about on this channel numerous times. He's probably, I would say, one of Frank Warren's top 4 most valued fighters. They seem to be moving him along very slow. These two guys are rumored, and it's a rumor coming from the Eddie Hearn side of things. Eddie Hearn's reportedly set to make a big offer to Frank Warren and Anthony Yarde to potentially fight his guy, Joshua Buatsi. So let me get into the quotes as to what's and the details as to what is happening between these two. So basically, Yarde's going to fight on the the Billy Joe Saunders, Martin Murray undercard. He'll probably fight a TBA opponent, another guy that he's supposed to beat and look good against. And then after that, Eddie Hearn plans to make an offer. So here's what Eddie Hearn had to say verbatim. He said, I quote, "We'll be making a big offer once we get through the summer and the next fights. Buatsi wants to get moving. He really wants to fight Anthony Yarde. He's already approached me and said, can you make that fight?" Hearn went on by saying, I made a huge offer for Caleb Johnson to fight Yarde in excess of 6 figures, and they said no because he's fighting on June 23rd. But he did have an opponent, and he doesn't have an opponent. I don't believe even at the stage we'd be willing for Caleb Johnson to fight Yarde on the 23rd. Then he goes on by saying this about Buatsi in regards to a fight with Yarde. He says, Buatsi is just too good. I rate Yarde. I think he's a talent, but Buatsi's on another level. Again, if Frank Warren will let Yarde fight on Sky, I'm happy to look at Buatsi fighting on BT Sport if it means getting Buatsi that fight. He's one of those guys where I'm so confident in him beating people. If we had to make a move like that to get the fight we want, then so be it. So that's what it is, man. Buatsi was an Olympian. I've seen him fight a couple times. Really good, skilled boxer. That to me, and I'll be honest with you guys, because Yarde is a good fighter, but I think the reluctance from Yarde and Frank Warren to put him in there, not with a world champion or anybody like that, but with anybody semi-credible is very alarming. Very, very alarming. I mean, he's had 15, 16 fights. He's looked good in all of them for the most part. He's been overpowering guys. I mean, yeah, he's hittable, but he hasn't gotten one of them like prospect building fights that you need to advance and get proper in-ring experience. So when you get to the world championship level, you can perform under the lights. He hasn't had that kind of experience yet. They turned down the Caleb Johnson fight. Caleb Johnson was a British champion. They didn't want to fight him. They also turned down a fight with Artur Beterbiev, who was a world champion. So there was no ambition to fight a British champion. There was no ambition to fight a world champion. So it really makes you believe, or makes you ask the question, just how many fights does Anthony Yarde need before Frank Warren puts him in there with somebody of note? Buatsi, like I said, Olympian, good amateur background, has shown growth in the pros, even in his 6 fights. Is that a fight they want to take right away? I highly doubt it. But it looks like a fight that Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing are very comfortable in making, because that's just how confident. And I know I listened to Eddie talk about Joshua Buatsi time after time again. He is very he's probably more confident about him sometimes, I feel, than he is even about Anthony Joshua. I'm not even joking with you. I've heard him talk about Joshua, but sometimes I almost feel like he's more confident in Joshua Buatsi. I'm not saying that he said that himself. I'm just going off what I see. He's that damn confident that he would take Joshua Buatsi to another network and take short money to fight a guy that people rate highly, because he's that confident that this dude will ice Anthony Yarde. And I think that speaks volumes, because Eddie Hearn is a person that takes calculated risks. He's not someone that just takes risks for the sake of taking risks. They're calculated risks. That's why he's trying to get his guy, Cal Yafai, the perceived weakest champion at 115, to fight Roman Gonzalez at this stage, because Roman Gonzalez he's taking punishment, he's older, he's been outside the ring. It's a calculated risk. It's a good name that he can get on his resume, but it's a calculated risk. So it's the same thing here. Calculated risk. The question is Frank Warren willing to put, because you got to look at it like this. Eddie Hearn pretty much has British boxing on lock right now, in terms of having to deal with Sky, having, branching off here to the States, having the $1 billion to play with his little streaming deal he got, or I shouldn't say little, but, his streaming deal that he got. The biggest names are all fighting for him in the UK, but Frank Warren, he's got a couple of, he's got like Billy Joe Saunders, Tyson Fury, Carl Frampton. He's got the big names. But is he willing to risk one of the perceived, guys that are the future of his stable at this stage of his career and potentially have that guy lose to an Eddie Hearn fighter? That's something I'm sure he's pondering because he wouldn't even put him in there with Caleb Johnson. And Caleb Johnson, no disrespect to Caleb Johnson, he's a good fighter. He's a solid fighter. He beat Frank Buglione to capture the British title. But that's what he is. At least at this stage of his career, that's all he is. He's a good, solid, British-level fighter. He hasn't really proven himself on that world stage yet. He might get a chance to do it against Beterbiev because I know he said he'd fight him, and I made that video. But Buatsi is different. He's a different breed than Johnson. He's a highly skilled amateur who has looked good in the pros so far. Very confident, and he has a kind of style that you would be led to believe that Yarde wouldn't be able to sit there and just, pick his shots and look sensational against. This would be a guy that he really have to be methodical and know how to set the shots up, and that's the stuff you learn when you have those proper prospect building fights, which he hasn't had yet. So I don't really see it happening, but it is an interesting question to ponder because they seem like they're really trying to get him a lot of quote unquote learning fights, but I hate when that term is thrown around in boxing because they'll say, "Oh, we want more learning fights." But sometimes these promoters and fighters get learning fights confused with mismatches. Learning fights are when you fight a guy that you're going to beat, but it can give you the proper in-ring experience. Like a learning fight, a good example of a learning fight would be like when Anthony Joshua, before he fought Dillian White and became a British champion, a learning fight for Anthony Joshua was when he fought Kevin Johnson. Kevin Johnson, a good, solid, strong, sturdy, domestic level heavyweight, never really progressed to the world level or past British level, but a good for where Anthony was at in his career, got him the proper experience, got him rounds, and he was able to progress forward. And then you saw him fight the likes of Dillian White, and then he became who he was after that. Yarde hasn't had one of those fights yet, so that would be the worry if I'm Frank Warren because promoters have to be honest with themselves, and if Frank Warren is as honest with himself as I think he is, I think he'll know that Yarde hasn't really been put in there like he should be yet. So it's very interesting. It's a very interesting fight, even style wise too, because like I said, Buatsi's a good, slick boxer. Yarde is a big, Adonis like light heavyweight. But he's someone that we know cuts like if you've been following his career, he cuts a lot of weight to make the light heavyweight limit. He's someone that is easily walking around 200 pounds, 210. He walks around at that, so he's cutting at least a good 20 to 30 pounds to make that weight. So yeah, interesting style matchup. I like to see it. I like to see how even for Buatsi, I like to see how Buatsi handles someone who can punch like Yarde, because Yarde, for better or for worse, he's shown the ability to get these guys out of there, whether they're tomato cans or not. He stopped 15 of the 16 guys he's fought. So we'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to seeing, hopefully they can find a way to get it made, because I'm always a fan of good prospect fights. I think this would be a good prospect fight. And yeah, so let me know what you guys think, especially my UK viewers who are probably a lot more educated on Buatsi and Yarde than I am. I know about them. I've watched many of their fights. But you guys can put me on game. What do you guys think about them? How do you think they match up style-wise? Let me know in the comments down below. Take the time to subscribe. And like I say in every video, you can love me or you can hate me, but I'm just a kid from Dang. So until next time, take care, guys.